Welcome to another episode of As Chess Recommends. Today we will discuss Crystals from 1974 by Sam Rivers. So I'll do a bit of an introduction to both the album and the artist. So this record is from the Impulse label, a very famous jazz label. It was produced by Ed Michel, and it was actually composed between a pretty long period of time from 1959 to 1972. Although, of course, it's not all composed, there is lots of improvisation here as well. And this is a fairly highly regarded album. The Rolling Stone Jazz Record Guide gave it 5-star. AllMusic gave it 5-star. But I think in general, it's not like one of those most famous jazz albums. So people who only listen to the biggest classics like Kind of Blue and Love Supreme probably haven't heard of this album. And I'm not going to go through all the musicians as the list is so huge, as this is kind of like experimental big band album, free jazz album, so it has so many different people in it. But now I'll talk a little bit about Sam Rivers. So he was born in 1923 and died in 2011 at age 88. So he lived a very long life, and he actually worked for a very long time from the 50s until pretty much his death. So for so many decades, which is also very interesting to see how like a career spans for that long of a time. But I haven't listened to that much of his stuff, so I can't really say. But yeah, so he is most famously a tenor saxophonist, but he has also performed on soprano saxophone, bass clarinet, and flute, harmonica, piano, and viola. And he's also been kind of part of different types of jazz. So we have avant-garde jazz, free jazz, and he also was an artist for the Blue Note label earlier on his career. So that was different type of jazz as well. And if you ever want to check a Wikipedia article with him, like you can see there are details about like different sections of his career. And he's worked with lots of great jazz artists, like even Miles Davis for a little bit, Dave Holland, Tony Williams, so many like really famous people. But I've only listened to like I think couple albums where he's involved, and for his like solo stuff or the stuff where he's the band leader, Crystals is the only album I've heard from him. And I think Crystals is one of his more highly regarded albums, but he has also made some other records that people like a lot, so which I need to listen to. And like I said, this album is free jazz, but not all of the tracks are like intense free jazz. There's lots of variety in the album, and it's not all like really weird and inaccessible, although a lot of it is. And it's 6 tracks, 40 minutes long. So that's, I think, a perfect length for an album like this. Obviously, as it is pretty crazy at times, you wouldn't want to listen to this for like hour and a half or anything. So 40 minutes, I think, is perfect. And I do like all the tracks here. But now I think after this introduction, I could ask Altaz what he thought of this album, and then we can get more into the details.
Yeah, I think initially I thought this, I found it hard to get into this album. The Cecil Taylor like unit structures, I think I gravitated to right away. But my journey with this album has been interesting because the more I kept re-listening to it, the more I kept hearing it differently. And I started noticing different aspects, and that almost made me think, well, the other times I was listening to it, I never heard this part, or I didn't note this and I didn't note that. So it's been like a kind of an exploration journey, and I still don't know fully what to think about it, to be honest. But I think it's a very interesting album, for sure.
So of course the album starts with an absolutely insane track called
Yeah,
Exultation,
insane.
which is like that's like full on free jazz insanity with crazy saxophones and crazy drumming.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
actually I actually really love that type of stuff, and lots of these like the crazier free jazz saxophone stuff here really reminds me of the late Coltrane stuff like Om and Ascension and those albums. It's
mm,
very similar to that, and obviously this came out in the 70s. So after that, although again, like I said, some of it was composed like way earlier, but even though it was actually composed in a 13-year period when jazz was changing a lot, I think the album still sounds very cohesive, even though it has these different sounds to it. And of course, the second track of the album is actually very different to the first track.
yeah.
The second starts with this like simple, funky groove,
Exactly. Yeah.
but it's actually a fairly long track, so it actually builds up to be something very different. So they slowly add these instrumental layers on top of the groove, and it becomes more and more like free jazz like, but it really draws you in at first with that simple, fun, funky groove that I think people can enjoy even if they aren't into jazz. And then after
Yeah.
the second track, there's this third track that's only like 2.5 minutes long, but it's pretty free jazz like, kind of interlude type of track. And then the last three tracks, there is lots of variety there. Again, some parts are very intense free jazz, but then there are moments that sound like a bit more like your average jazz from the 60s. Like there's this parts where the drumming sounds like your very basic drum and bass compo from any kind of 60s jazz album.
Mm.
But then when you hear the saxophone getting more and more intense on top of it, it starts sounding like free jazz, and then the drums and bass slowly from that basic rhythm start going like all over the place, and it just becomes this full-on chaos. But I think for me in this album, definitely both the saxophone and the drums are the highlights, as they are the instruments that go really
Mhm.
crazy and all over the place, and I really enjoy that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I was really drawn to the B-side tracks. So the last three, uh, more recently as I was listening more and more, because just the past few days I really started to pay attention more and more to the solos, because there's some really great like sax solo playing in there. That's really like really captivating, really interesting, and yeah, kind of creating these breakout points where you're just kind of pulled in, and then you're just listening to it, and it feels very powerful. Those I agree, the drums are great as well. The first three tracks, I agree with you. The first one is bonkers. So I think it's like when you first hear it and you first put it on, that first track is so bonkers. It's so active. It's so it feels almost all over the place that you can't really grab a strand to really understand what's going on, which is of course the aspect of free jazz, right? We're not trying to have always continuing melody or continuing theme. It's a lot of like almost frantic energy, and interesting that the track is titled Exaltation, because exaltation is like that. It's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of enthusiasm, in the favor of venerating something. So that I keep thinking about when I'm listening to, because you can feel the activity and the voice and the exaltation, and almost a frenzy. You feel the frenzy in that track, and then, like you said, yeah, the second track totally throws you off, because the next one starts with this smooth groove, and you're kind of just chilling, and it's kind of funky, and you're like, how is this the same album? Two very different things, and that one is called Tranquility, uh, which is a kind of interesting expression of tranquility, because tranquility we always sometimes think of in a different way, in a more silence way, and then while this one is much more of a groove, so tranquility being a groove is kind of cool uh, concept. But yeah, like I said, it's I'm still listening to it and still kind of thinking, because it seems to change every time I listen to it. So that's what I find really interesting about this album is when you listen to it, you each time you hear a very different album, uh, but it makes it hard to pin down as well as a work.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of free jazz, that it's so kind of stream of consciousness, so your own stream of consciousness. When you are listening to a stream of consciousness type of music, it makes that every experience is a bit different, because you have two streams of consciousness kind of clashing together,
Yeah,
you could say. So that's very interesting. And this is actually a difficult album to talk about in the way that some of it is, I think, way more accessible than some free jazz, but then the intense moments are really inaccessible. But there are moments of even like very nice, catchy melodies here and there, and looking like we talk about the funky groove that almost sounds like it's not even jazz. So it makes it very accessible, but then it just kind of hits you in the face at times. But I think that's also what makes it maybe a bit more accessible, that it's not like insane saxophone for 40 minutes straight, but it gives you these breathing moments and peaks and
mm,
valleys, so you can digest it a bit easier when it's not crazy like all the time. But of course, so much of it is really nuts. But yeah,
yeah,
and I think one more thing also that came to me about like the stream of consciousness and the freeness of the music is that the album cover, which is again the crystals, and we see these fragments. So obviously the music is kind of very fragmentary as well. Like we have these very different elements clashing like against each other, and it's like a crystal in a way with the different elements that are kind of again fragmented, broken, but somehow they become a whole in a way. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, you're right, because um, crystal fragments, but crystal also distortion, right? Because when you look to a crystal, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting, right? Because it depends what kind of crystal as well. Like, crystal, some people use crystal can also be a form of clarity, um, but crystal can be fragmentary, like you said, and can be distorting. So you're right about the music being kind of entering you, because it is very visceral, I think, as a style of music. Like it's one that you almost experience it like going in through your pores. It's not just entering through the ears, but it's almost like a spirit. Like it's like it enters you, and like you said, like you can really feel uh, all kinds of emotions and experiences internally as a result of listening to it. And like you said, that's a very interesting point you say about stream of consciousness, because yeah, that is true. It's like when you're listening, you don't know which part's you and which part's the music. It kind of just enters you, and then it's each time it's about what mood or you're in or what you're doing, and you experience it differently. So it is quite like yeah, it's quite confounding in certain ways too. To listen to it, yeah. And listening to it also like made me think about this exhibition I went to at the Tate, the Blue Rider group, who are the kind of the expressionists of like the early 20th century and all that. And you know like Franz Marc, who was like painting everything. He would look through prisms, and then he painted his scenes based on what it would look like if you looked at that through the prism. So it actually made me think of this. The album makes me think of that, and that made me think of the album because I was listening to it kind of coinciding. So I think that's really interesting, the fragmentary aspect.
And I think this type of music really can open your brain and open your thinking, because music already itself is like a very stream of consciousness, very abstract art form. And I think Schopenhauer, for example, considered music to be the ultimate art form, the best art form, because it's in touch with your kind of
Mm,
unconscious brain also, and that kind of,
mm,
again, that stream of consciousness and that pure creativity. And of course, this type of music is that even more so, and this is kind of the pure example of that part of the human consciousness and brain, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, and I think also this whole album is, to me, it's like very just pure fun to listen to. Like I'm constantly popping my head when I listen to these weird grooves, and
Mm,
I just absolutely love this type of like insane saxophone playing, and I love this type of ordered chaos in all types of music. And I love,
mm,
again, like I've said on this channel many times, atonal and dissonant music a lot, because it just hits my
mm,
dysfunctional part of my thinking and the anxious part so well. So it really speaks to me in a very raw way. It speaks to so much of my persona and all of my flaws, but also the creative side of me, I think.
yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can see what you're saying 100%, because it does it. Yeah, you feel a lot as it's going. So that's why sometimes it's quite intense. Uh, just like the first track, when you like hear all that, it's just you're feeling a lot at the same time. And you're right, it does unlock your brain, because as an organism you probably are feeling all these things at once, and then hearing it as music uh, makes you realize how busy your mind is at times, or how many conflicting things are going on at the same time, or how they're changing constantly as well. So yeah.
It's of course kind of weird to recommend this type of stuff to people, as I think your average person will hear just noise. When they listen to this, they won't hear a groove or melody or anything. They just think it's just random noise put together. And this type of music you really need to get used to listening to. It's not something that
Mm,
will
yeah.
just immediately click with you when you are just getting into it. But then there will be a point, at least there was for me, when I'm kind of getting very seasoned in listening to this type of music, that I can like start loving this type of music immediately, because
Mm,
I'm just so used to at this point listening to
yeah.
this type of crazy music. So it's kind of a skill that you develop, that you can learn to love this type of music. But I know many people think that with art you shouldn't have to do any work, you shouldn't do any developing, you should just click with an art immediately or then forsake it for forever. But I've always been willing to challenge myself and try to put effort into learning something, and I think that's the right way with art, and especially with this type of difficult music, that there is beauty in this type of craziness, but you just need to work for finding it. You need to be like Indiana Jones when you try to find the treasure. You won't find it instantly. The map to the treasure might be like weird. Maybe you won't find the right path immediately, but you will find it eventually if you try hard enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been studied as well that when things challenge you, whether it's art or music, there's a it's actually forcing your brain uh, to reorder, to kind of move around. And so, like you said, so if you know what's familiar, then you don't get that process happening. But that process happening is very beneficial, because you now can develop kind of perception or appreciation, or at least understanding of things that you couldn't before. And I think that's of a lot of value. Um, and it also makes you think that when you reorder and you see that creator could see it just as is in their brain, so it puts you in awe of it's just with the world, that nature, and different psychologies that, like, can you imagine, like, someone just, they could see that, or they could sense that, or they could put that together, or they could express that, and now you're kind of fumbling with it, trying to understand it. And if you do, or you appreciate it or whatnot, then it's like, isn't that interesting that someone could have that in them to start? Like, they, that's just how they were ordered in their mind. It helps you appreciate diversity as well.
And that's kind of like how this music is, that it takes something from the past and reorders it a little bit to his own image.
Mhm.
And while Sam Rivers isn't like, again, as famous as Miles Davis or Coltrane, but like I said in the beginning, he had a very long career and he's well respected in the jazz circles, and this type of stuff had lots of influence to like how avant-garde jazz and free jazz would develop after it. And definitely for people who are interested in free jazz, I think Sam Rivers is a must listen, and like I said, need to listen to some of his other stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Because before this, he had done like, I think, quite a few free jazz albums as a band leader already. So if we listen to the earlier ones, maybe we would see a bit more raw version of this, but here we see a bit more developed version of these same ideas. But yeah, we'll see when I get to those albums. But yeah,
Definitely.
so we will return to free jazz later on the year. So we have 2 more free jazz albums before the year ends. So we have Ornette Coleman's Science Fiction, which is probably my favorite free jazz album. I think it's fairly accessible for free jazz. It even has vocals in a couple of the tracks. Then we have John Coltrane's Ascension, which is one of the most famous free jazz albums, if not the most famous.
Right. Yeah. Looking forward to it. And there's that like documentary film or whatever Ornette made in America that's on the Criterion channel. So I might watch that as well.
Yeah.
When listening, getting to that album and stuff could be interesting.
But now it's one more thing now is that I need to tell you what we are gonna listen to for next time. So we are gonna go back to classical music. So we are showing you guys that people can enjoy both jazz and classical, like we talked about with Minkus. So next time we will talk about Chopin's piano stuff played by a famous Polish pianist Christian Zimmerman. So that's like an hour-long recording. It has 4 of Chopin's ballads and then a couple of other pieces. And then for people who look for that album on streaming services, definitely check the link that I will leave down below, because Zimmerman has like lots of different Chopin recordings, so make sure that it's the right one that you listen to. So when you click the link, you can see what the album cover is and the years and stuff. But yeah, because it can be sometimes very overwhelming when you look at like streaming service and more classical like works, and there are like dozens of albums, and then you have to find the right one. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that will be great, as Chopin is maybe my favorite composer, like for classical music. So
yeah, I love Chopin too. Yeah.
And I was earlier thinking one more thing about Dexter and Frank Lundy, who loved Chopin, and he said to Deborah, "Do you ever listen to Chopin?" And then Deborah starts listening to it in the gym and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on her runs on the treadmill. Yeah, I love that part too.
Yeah, but anyway, thanks for watching. It was a great chat. Don't drink Coke at all. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.